Welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today to learn more about how to apply for a VentureWell Faculty Grant. We hope to receive proposals from every one of you. And we hope today to cover any questions that you might have about this application process and our new request for proposals. My name is Cindy Gilbert. I'm a senior program officer at VentureWell, and I oversee our higher education catalyst team, which includes our faculty initiatives and sustainability initiatives. And I work very closely with Patty, or Patricia, and Seth, and I'll just turn it over to them to say a quick hello. But before I do that, I just want to give a full disclosure that I've been with VentureWell for about a year, a little over a year, but I've been connected with VentureWell for over a decade. And I wanted to let everybody on the call know that I've been in your shoes before. I applied for faculty grants while I was running a graduate program in sustainable design and was successful in receiving 2 faculty grants from VentureWell. So I've been on both sides of this process, and I'm happy to be as transparent about what you need to do to be successful. So Patty, do you want to say hi?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Patty. I'm the grants manager. I oversee the sort of intake, review, and notification and disbursement of our faculty and E-team grants. I have been with VentureWell for 12 years. 6 of those have been as grants administrator role. And then for 6 years, I was part of the E-team team. So I do know a lot about the E-team program. And we are happy to answer questions about the E-team program as well, if you have any. I work with my colleague, Seth. Seth, do you want to just say hi? I might need to unmute you.
I think I can unmute. I'm Seth Dasher. I'm VentureWell's grant administrator. And as of Thursday, it will be 2 years with VentureWell. And so I'm also involved with the intake processing notifications for faculty grants. And I would just say if people have questions subsequent to this webinar, feel free to reach out to us at grants@venturewell.org. And we do have a question. Will the recording be available later?
Yes, we are recording. Thank you for full disclosure to everybody on here. We are recording today. So yes, the recording will be available later. We'll also make the slides available later as a PDF.
Fantastic. So we're just going to jump into our presentation now. As we said in the chat box and said earlier, please do use the chat box to add any questions that you might have as we're going through. We do have 2 kind of hard breaks within the presentation to answer questions that you might have. So know that there's opportunities, and we want to go through this material that we're presenting fairly quickly so that we can save as much time for conversation and questions as possible. So I'm just going to jump right in. And Patty will advance our slides. So I think everyone is aware that we're from VentureWell, but you might not be aware exactly where we're located. So a lot of people think we're either in DC or Boston, but we're actually physically located in Hadley, Massachusetts, which is in Western Mass, in a very beautiful rural area. But of course, today, due to COVID, we're all working virtually, except Patty is actually in our physical space. She's the only person in the office right now in order to do this webinar. And I'm physically located in Missoula, Montana, and normally am remote staff anyhow. But I did want to share with VentureWell, we've been around since 1996, so this is our 25th anniversary. And really, this is the brainchild of, VentureWell is the brainchild of Jerry Lemelson and our current and founding CEO and president, Phil Weilerstein. And our mission is to bring innovation and entrepreneurship into higher education so that those folks, students and faculty, can be solving the world's most pressing problems. I need to advance through there. And then the next slide, Patty.
I did advance, you're not seeing it?
Not quite yet. Okay, great. So we just wanted to briefly share with you that we have many funders and partners, many more than that are on here. We did want to recognize that the Lemelson Foundation was our founding funder and has continued to fund our programs, including this faculty grants program since for 25 years. And so we have lots of funders from State Department, federal grants, as well as some corporate funders. So we have really 3 pillars of work that we do at VentureWell. We support early stage inventors and innovators, and we support institutional change agents, which we include you as these institutional change agents, which are mostly faculty that deliver our programs that cultivate and support university innovators, including students. And we really use you, we leverage you as the way that we can make change. And we do this through our granting, our workshops and training and conferences, and now our community of practice work. And our 3rd pillar is to strengthen innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystems. That's fine, that's really great. And so diving into this middle pillar of institutional change agents and faculty grants as a means to support that change, really faculty grants are all about providing funding to support your efforts to create new courses or programs, or to enhance, expand, or improve existing courses and programs. And very specifically, we're looking at STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, innovation, and entrepreneurship.
Sorry, folks. Okay.
So since we've launched the Faculty Grants Program in 1996, we've been really honored to support and give away over $12 million in grant funding awards. This has gone to support nearly 600 different courses and programs at over 200 universities. And we know now we have approximately over 50,000 students that we've impacted over those 25 years. And we're really excited to learn through our faculty grant retrospective study that we just finished this spring that about 80% of the courses and programs that we've funded are still offered today, which is really exciting. And you'll see when you're writing your narrative for this, that this is something that we really look at. How can you sustain your course or program after the funding ends? So just quickly looking at our faculty grants program, overarchingly, we have 2 cycles per year. So if you don't apply this fall, you can always apply in the spring semester. The next deadline is November 4th. So the request for proposals, RFP, is open now, but it does close, the deadline does close on November 4th. And then, like I said, the next cycle will start in the spring, which is usually in May. We allocate $600,000 per year, which is usually around up to $30,000 per grant, and over the duration of 3 years. So if you get full funding of $30,000, that is issued up front, but you can spend it over 3 years. And it's about a 15 to 25% fund rate. So our faculty grants focus on STEM entrepreneurship, as I mentioned before. We're really looking for social and environmental impacts. So really tying back to our mission, which is to help our innovators solve the world's most pressing issues. We are really working, especially in this new RFP, to extend participation of underrepresented groups. So really keep that in mind when you're applying, if there's ways that you can highlight that you're expanding you're broadening and expanding your participation of your students and faculty members. Really let us know what you're doing at your institution to include women, people of color, and other underrepresented groups. We're looking for experiential learning by doing. Really, do they get hands-on? Do the students get hands-on experiences? Are they prototyping? Are they going out and doing customer interviews? Are they actually really getting that hands-on experience? We really are looking for the resulting formation of student teams, ideally multidisciplinary teams, although that's not required. But this is something that we look for in our proposals. And also that we're really looking for the fact that your school and institution and maybe department are supporting, having a supporting entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I do want to mention that if that doesn't exist, so for example, if this is your first time applying, maybe your school doesn't have an innovation program or an entrepreneurship program, please let us know about who in your circle of influence could be partnering with you, could support your students' efforts. So we look for a supportive ecosystem, but it doesn't have to actually exist. And then lastly, we look for a plan for financial sustainability. As I mentioned before, we really want to see that after this award ends, that you're going to be able to support this course or program for a long-term view. So a commitment to equity. So something we really want to highlight. We've been working to advance equity both internally and externally through our programs at VentureWell for a number of years, and we're really learning a lot along the way. But this new request for proposals for faculty grants, we've actually very clearly integrated language about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we really wanted to share with you that we actually have set out what we consider to be very stretched goals and metrics to achieve our goals around advancing equity. So this fall cycle, we are looking to support up to 50% minority serving institutions. That includes tribal colleges, historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, etc. And we also are interested in achieving this other metric of 50% PIs. So faculty PIs who self-identify as members of one or more underrepresented groups. And we really want to widen our net. So we're interested in supporting at least 1/3 of new higher education institutions that have never received a grant from VentureWell before. So what this grant provides, so as I mentioned before, up to $30,000 over the course of 3 years. It also includes monthly peer-to-peer community of practice calls that are held virtually and facilitated by VentureWell specifically for this fall cohort. It'll be specifically for PIs from minority serving institutions or that self-identify as part of an underrepresented group, so that we can really cultivate and support those faculty to make change at their institutions. And then the grants also provide funding to attend VentureWell's annual conference. This year, this annual cycle, it'll be in March 2021, and it will be virtual, but hopefully in the future, we'll also have go back to having our in-person annual conference called Open each year. So you will be able to attend that using the funding that's provided. So we wanted to just quickly give you a little bit of information about recently funded grants, just to give you sort of a general idea of what types of schools we do fund, what types of programs. And so here's just a list of different recently funded grants. And so, for example, at the University of Colorado Boulder, they launched a program for engineering for social innovation. At San Jose State University, it was actually quite a unique situation where the faculty PIs were actually from the geosciences department. And so they really wanted to bring entrepreneurship and innovation into the work they were doing. So we actually, you can see here that we fund, of course, state schools, we fund large schools, small schools, all different types of disciplines. We're really looking to expand our equity work, as I mentioned before. So we also fund minority serving institutions. I'm not sure if there was anything else I was supposed to say on that slide, but Patty will weigh in, I'm sure, if there was anything. I think that's my last slide before I'll take questions at this point, if there are any. It looks like there's a question here from Margaret. Our program focuses on the intersection of materials, science, and human-centered design, interiors, and apparel. Would this fall under the definition of STEM? Yes, absolutely. I mean, depending on how you're framing it, but absolutely, we've funded human-centered design projects before, and absolutely material science is something we're very interested in, especially as it relates to social and environmental impacts. Do you have to be a college or university to apply? Yes, you do. And maybe Patty, you want to weigh in on here, but I can tell you that all of our grants are actually issued to colleges or universities, and that's a requirement on how we're funded. But Patty, did you want to add anything else on this question?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like you have faculty working with you that are at Tufts. So, you know, the way to deal with this might be to have Tufts be the awarding university, and then you would partner with them. So I don't know, Lisa, what academic institution you're at, but or what institution you're at. But that might be the way to deal with the requirement that it be a university. We can certainly talk about it more. Oh, Maine Medical Center, thank you. Yeah, so we can talk more about it offline.
Great question. There's one more question here before we move into the next part of the presentation. How about institutions that are not VentureWell members? Can the PI be a member and apply? So again, great question. Yes, the answer is yes. So you can, first of all, institutions that are not members can become members. And actually this year, it's really exciting. We have waived membership fees. And so this is a great time for new institutions to become members. And there's absolutely no fee. We're waiving the $999 typical fee. And can the PI become a member and apply? And yes, that's also true. Individuals can become members. Did you want to add anything to that, Patty?
Yeah, so VentureWell membership is by institution. You have to have an institutional membership in order to apply. We do have an individual membership, but one of the benefits do not include the ability to apply for a grant. However, as Cindy just said, we are waiving membership fees this year, so it's super easy to become a member. You just have to fill out the form and submit it, and your membership will be covered through the end of the academic year. I think we said through June 30th, 2021. We'll give you two times to apply before your membership expires.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for those great questions. Keep adding your questions to the chat box, and I'm going to turn it over to Patty, who's going to finish out our presentation.
Yeah,
and
so
again, we'll have time.
Right. So now I'm driving and talking, so hopefully I won't crash the car here. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the process and the components of your application. All of the information that you could want, every question that you could possibly think of, you can find the answer to in the faculty grant guidelines, which are accessible on our website on the faculty grants page. This is a screenshot of the page. You can also download a PDF copy of it. So if you want to carry it around with you, you can have it. But all of the answers to the questions that you might have, you can find here. So, as Cindy mentioned earlier, so in order to apply for a grant, you have to be at a US-based university or college, and your university or college has to be a VentureWell member institution. And we mentioned membership fees are waived this year, so it's easier than ever to join VentureWell and learn about all the different opportunities that are available to members, not just faculty grants. So there are several components to your faculty grant application. There's your 5-page narrative, which includes a work plan, outcomes, and a budget. The PI and collaborator resumes, so the resumes of the people who are going to be doing the work with you. At least one letter of support, and we'll accept up to 3 in your packet, and then verifications of institutional support. We're going to talk about all of these areas in a bit more detail in a moment. And then there is the option to include some additional materials. So in an appendix, so up to 5 additional documents, could be syllabi, website information, articles, whatever would help you to tell the story of the proposal that you the idea that you're proposing. And again, all of this is spelled out in great detail in the guidelines. So just going to kind of run through the components of the narrative really, really quickly. Again, all in much more detail in the guidelines. So what is it that you're proposing? Is it a course? Is it a program? What gaps are you addressing? So is there a hole that you're trying to fill in the program or offerings at your university? What's the process? So how would a student take your course? Is it for freshmen? Is it for upper class people? What's the process through? How does this course fit within your existing innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem on campus? As Cindy mentioned earlier, this would be the place to talk about if you are just starting to build your entrepreneurial ecosystem. How is this kind of a stepping stone to the bigger, broader ecosystem that you're creating on your campus? What's the experiential learning opportunity for your students? As Cindy mentioned when she was talking, this is there should be a hands-on component to what the students are learning. How will the teams be formed and where will the projects come from? So will the teams self-form? Will they be assigned based on their some criteria? And then where will the project ideas come from? Is your course going to be sector specific or discipline specific, or is it going to be more agnostic? And what's the path for students who want to continue? So this comes back to the ecosystem question. This is the reason we want to know about your ecosystem, because we want to know that your students, the students who want to continue working on their project, have a place to go. So, do you have an entrepreneurship center? What other resources might your students have who want to continue? And then what's the potential impact? So, is social and environmental impact and educational impacts as well. We want to know about those. And then who will you be collaborating with? Who, both maybe, your co-teachers, but also are you working with folks in the community? Are you working with other organizations on campus and outside of your campus? And then what's your plan to make this happen? So what's your work plan? What are sort of the big milestones that have to happen in order for you to get this course or program off the ground? And then in your work plan, these are the kinds of things that we are interested in. So what are the milestones? What's the timeline for accomplishing them? And then how do you see the course growing over the time period? And then both individual students and the number of teams that are generated in the course or program. And then objectives and outcomes. So what is the objective for your idea? What do you hope to what do you hope to get out of this? What do you hope your students get out of it? And then what outcomes are you hoping for? Again, this is all spelled out in the guidelines. So I want to talk a little bit about the difference between the verification of support and the letter of support. So verification of institutional support is an automated step that happens in our via our online intake tool. And we require the verification of support from these three people on your campus as a way to verify awareness of your idea. So awareness and support of what it is that you're doing. Your administrative contact should be somebody from your Office of Sponsored Programs. If you don't know who that is, this is probably the most challenging step for both faculty and for students. So for our E-Team program as well, is figuring out who the person in your Office of Sponsored Programs is who should be included in your proposal. So, you know, if you're thinking about applying, probably the first thing I would say is contact your Office of Sponsored Programs and find out who your administrative contact should be if you don't know who that person is already. The administrative contact will often do kind of the pre-award, all the pre-award steps at your university. I'm sure you all know this already. And often your university will want to vet and approve your proposal before you can submit it anyway. So your pre-award contact, I think, is the person who does that. And then we also want to hear from your department chair and your dean of faculty. Again, it's just awareness that they know about what you're proposing and they support the idea. As I mentioned, this is an automated step. You put the information into the system, an email is automatically generated, goes to these 3 people with some details about what you're proposing. It says, you know, do you support this project? They initial it and they click a little button that says submit. It comes back, it updates your proposal in our system. And this is a required step. So you won't be able to submit without the verifications of these 3 folks. The letter of support is a little bit different. That's an actual letter. It should be from somebody who, it can be from somebody from your administration that can verify all or some of the items on this list. So, you know, is there any additional funding for the course that you're proposing? What funding will be available after the grant ends? So how will the course be sustained? How does the work fit into the current ecosystem? And then, you know, what actions are being taken to broaden participation, both in the particular course that you're proposing, as well as, you know, what's happening at your institution at large. And this should, and as I said, this could be, you know, an administration person, so someone from your administration. It could be an external partner. It really depends on who, you know, what person would be best to kind of help you to tell your story. So I'm going to just stop right there before we get into the pitfall, so what not to do. But does anybody have any questions about what I just ran through? I know we did that really, really quickly. Oh God.
Hey, Patty, while we're waiting for potential questions, could you go back to the slide about outcomes and objectives?
Sure.
I just wanted to highlight, again, sort of from my experience of being a faculty member and applying, it is really important that when you're reading through these guidelines that you very closely align your proposal narrative with these objectives and outcomes. And the reason why is that we've really intentionally set these questions, we've set these questions in order to guide the proposal, but it's also part of how we review. We have a whole external review process for faculty grant proposals. And these objectives and outcomes are tied to the scoring rubric. So if you're missing some of these responses within your narrative, that will be clear to the reviewer. So just like a pro tip here, really try and get aligned with these objectives and outcomes, and you'll just really increase your chances of success.
Great. And it looks like we did have a question about a resume format, and it looks like Seth responded. Thank you, Seth. Yeah, so 3-page limit on resumes, and I think there's up to, we'll accept 4 or 5. Do you remember, Seth, how many? 4. We'll accept 4 resumes, 3 pages each. Okay, so all right. Are we required to obtain a letter of support from a department chair, dean, et cetera, as well? Your letter of support could come from one of those people. And they should be responding to those items that we were just talking about. But it also could come from an external partner if you're working with an external partner, or if you're working internationally, it could come from an international partner. So, it depends on kind of the story that you are wanting to tell. Okay. So, so we often get asked, like, what shouldn't we do? Like, what are the common mistakes that folks make when they're writing their proposal? So we'll just run through these really quickly. So this is a big one. So no entrepreneurship. We often talk about this as kind of a three-legged stool, our grants program. So entrepreneurship and technology and impact are really the three really important legs of the stool. So your proposal should have all of these things. It's possible that maybe you're missing one of them and that's what you're proposing. So if that's the case, if you're saying, well, we have this course, it is a STEM course, but there is no entrepreneurship and this is what we're proposing, that's okay. So no entrepreneurship is what you're proposing too research focused? Is there no path to commercialization? And if the projects begin and end in the classroom, probably will unlikely to be funded. Too much past, not enough future. So we often get these proposals with just page after page after page of all of the great resources that the university has, and 2 paragraphs on what the proposal is. That a couple of things. It's like we don't have enough information to decide on the new thing, and you've just spent all this time talking about all the great resources. So why do you need, why do you need this other thing? So really work on, think about that balance between, describing what already exists and how you'll fit in there. Shouldn't be too much of either one. Mentioned many, many times that the course or program is not tech or STEM focused. Oops. And then there's not an experiential learning component. Lack of expertise, especially if you're working in a particular sector area or discipline. For your technology hands-on, there should be somebody on your team that can act as the expert. An unclear proposal. So we're not really sure what you're proposing. This happens a lot. Sometimes there's too much jargon or too many acronyms. Oh, the acronyms. Sometimes the way that a project is described is difficult and challenging to follow. If the budget doesn't align with the work plan or doesn't align with sort of the description of what the course or the program will be, that mismatch is often an issue. There's no plan or no convincing plan of how the course will be sustained after the grant funding ends. Some thought should be given to that. Maybe you don't have an idea yet about it, but maybe some thought should be given. No resulting E-teams or E-teams. So what this means is really no resulting student teams. So really, and student teams are the little e, capital T, big E, big EB, big T is our E-team program team. So ultimately, we would love to see student teams from your course or program apply to the E-team program. And hopefully there'll be a plan that you describe in there about how that will happen. So how will those student teams be chosen or apply to the E-team program. And, you know, just generally at the small t, how will student teams just be formed in the course or program. And then the resulting student projects don't have a clearly defined social and environmental impact. So yeah, they should be working on something that is solving big problems for people or the environment. And no connection to existing campus resources. So, you know, this is about where does what you're proposing slot into what already exists? What gap are you filling? It's really important to know how the pieces of the puzzle fit together. Whew, any questions?
Yeah, there are a couple of questions in the chat box, and also now we're at the end of the presentation, so we could take verbal questions. Yes. I just wanted to point out that there was a question about clarification around the $30,000 for 3 years. So just to be very clear, it's a maximum award of $30,000 that can be allocated over 3 years, not 3 years of $30,000 each. Hopefully that's clear. And then it looks like there's another question here. What is the difference between little e team and capital E team? Do you want to describe that again, Patty?
Yeah, did I answer that question while you were typing there, Shawana, or shall I describe it again? Okay, sure. I'll describe it again. So a small e, small t e team is kind of any student team. So 2 or more students working on a project is a small e, small t. This is VentureWell speak, is a small e team. A large e, large t e team is a student team that applies to our e-team program, which is a student grant program. It's $25,000 over for a 2-stage program for students working on technology. So oftentimes, sort of in an ideal world, what we love to see is a faculty grant funded course that generates e-teams that those teams apply to the e-team program, and we fund those teams as well. So that's kind of like, in an ideal world, that's what we would love to see. We would love to see your student teams going into the e-team program. Do e-teams retain intellectual property rights? VentureWell makes no claim at all to any IP. So this is on your university. So it's whatever your university's rules are about IP. Any other questions? Can a grant award amount cover a course buyout? That is a question I have never, ever, ever gotten. I don't even know what it means. Cindy, you're from academia. Do you know what it means?
I actually don't know exactly what you might, I think it might be better to hear from Ashley. And actually, can we allow her to unmute herself, or do we do it?
Yeah, let me just see what the deal is here.
Okay, because I think it might be helpful to understand the situation, Ashley, in order to answer it accurately.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, Ashley's actually a guy. My question is simply about if it would cover what we call an S contract. It's a course release, so that it would be one less course you're teaching that semester in order to spend that time developing what this grant would be paying for. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think it does make sense. I will take a stab at answering this, and then Patty, please weigh in to course correct. So I think one thing to be really clear about, we haven't talked about the budget allocation and requirements and eligibility in this presentation, but we are very clear in the guidelines what's eligible and what's not. And so up to $5,000 maximum can be dedicated toward personnel. So you could, depending on what your pay is for for teaching a course, you could use that fund, that $5,000 to quote unquote buy yourself out of a course. Patty, did you want to add anything to that?
Sure. Yeah, really the personnel line item in the budget really is for the development of the course materials. It's not for the sort of the ongoing teaching of the course. I know that some people can make it work. I know that, but you know, $5,000 isn't very much money. But I do know some people can make it work, that they can you know, use that to cover the cost of developing the course or program materials and apply some of it to the actual teaching part of it. But for the most part, you know, the funding is really just for the development of the course materials.
Okay.
So we're funding the sort of the course and not the person. You know what I mean? Like just the course development rather than the ongoing teaching.
I see. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
You're welcome.
And
Any other questions?
Yeah. And feel free to just unmute yourself and ask rather than typing into the chat box if you'd like.
I'm curious, since we have a little bit of time and while people are thinking of questions, I would love to kind of get a raised hand or maybe in the chat box to say yay or nay after being part of this webinar, if you think that you might apply for the fall cycle. Oh, great. I like seeing the yeses coming in. That's fantastic. Okay, wonderful. And I do want to throw out there too, I know we have on our next slide information about how to contact us, and Patty will share that with you. We do want you to know that we're in service to your success, and we like to see strong proposals come in. So if you happen to have, you know, questions after this webinar, please don't hesitate to contact us. You know, you can contact us through email at grants@venturewell.org. And as Seth mentioned, you know, we're on standby to answer questions for you. There's also a ton more information on our Faculty Grants website or webpage, which we have the link there to find that information, venturewell.org/faculty-grants. And I also would like to extend an offer if people have, you know, a solid idea and even like a level of an abstract or something like that they've put together and they have questions about how to strengthen that, or they, you know, you just have a concern or something like that, please drop me an email, or you can contact us through Grants and they will get the information to me. But I'm happy to set up one-on-one calls, like just quick, you know, 15-20 minute calls to go over what you're thinking and to help you strengthen your proposal. And then we also have added some information here about our eTeams program, which is our student funding opportunity. And you can contact David D'Angelo. He's ddangelo@venturewell.org, and he's more than happy to set up calls to help students navigate that application process. Okay,
and I do see we have a couple more questions here. How many proposals will be funded? Well, it depends. As Cindy mentioned earlier, we have $600,000 a year to spend budgeted for faculty grants. So that comes out to about $300,000 per cycle, which at $30,000 is, you know, probably between 10 and 15 proposals get funded. Not everybody asks for the full 30,000, and not everybody gets funded for their whole 30,000 if they ask. Reviewers might see some funding requests that maybe just are ineligible, so they might redline some things off of there. So somewhere between 10 and 15 usually is where we are. And then is the payment to faculty for course development also included in the $5,000? Yes, $5,000 total for all personnel costs. There's also, you can, apply, you can budget for the actual physical, materials and supplies of your course. That's a separate line item. But for the actual personnel cost, $5,000 is the cap per grant. Any last questions? Oh, is there an optimal number of students you look for? No, a team, so 2 to 5 probably is, but it does seem to vary greatly depending on the school, the course. Indirect costs. Thank you for asking that. I always forget to mention this. VentureWell does not allow indirect costs to be taken out of any of its grants. So zero indirect costs. Faculty usually say yay, and administrators usually go boo. So hopefully you're a faculty person. Anyone else? All right, well, if there are no other questions, as Cindy mentioned, please don't hesitate to give us a call. Oh. Got another question. Collaborators are involved both the yes, $5,000 is the total. That's all there is for personnel, $5,000. You can slice it and dice it however you want. So, but the cap is 5,000. So we hope to hear from all of you. Hope to see your proposals in November. Yeah, we're going to give you 10 minutes of your life back. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing your proposals.
Thank you, everyone.